Okay, so you all don't know me. My name is Ryan. Pittsburgh, PA. Pittsburgh, still a city. Um, so I came on today because I've been thinking of how I could get my story out, and maybe somehow I can help anyone else that's going through what I'm going through. Um, I've always been good with words of being very uplifting, because I have a story for almost everything. So I want to start off by saying, whatever you're going through in life, um, whatever trials, tribulations, your ups, your downs, um, give it to God. He is the way. God has brought me through tremendous storms. And I grew up in the church. But I strayed away, of course. I'm human and I've made my mistakes, plenty of them. But a lot of them I've learned from. Some I continue to see myself making. But now at the age of 42, I've learned that um, that's not how I want to live my life anymore. So let's get some more light. Sorry. Okay, so anyway, um, I want to start by saying, I've been hurting for a long time, for so many years. And the pain that I've been experiencing is more so because I am so gullible. I've been so gullible for years. If you are gullible, you have to change that. You have to change the way you think, to change the way you feel. And I say that because being gullible and being um, can't think of the word right now, but that's so different than being um, someone that allows themselves to feel, because we tend to care about how others treat us, how others think of us. So we have to learn how to say, okay, I don't want to be gullible anymore. But learn that being vulnerable, and they are two different things. Being vulnerable, that is to someone that is deserving of you being vulnerable. That is for you to know that, okay, I'm going to open up. I'm going to allow this person to see me break sometimes, because that person is deserving of that, because that person is able to see you break, but also hold their hand out and pick you right back up. When they say, I got you, allow it. We have to stop being stubborn. We have to stop being um, cold-hearted to the ones that really are there for us. So I want to give you a little backstory about who I am. Again, I told you my name is Ryan. So I'm new to this. So call me out on my mistakes or whatever the case may be. But I'm 42 years old, and I have 5 children. I have 6, and I'm a grandmother to 1 and 1 on the way. So my children are ages, my oldest, which he has passed on, he would have been 26. Then you have, and his name is, not was, but is Andres. Then we have Sky Lynn, Perfect Sky. She is 24. Then we have Jordan, or Nuke. He is 19. Then I have Jaden. That's my baby boy. And my baby boy is 14. I also call Jaden Booby. Then we have my youngest baby girl, which I had my youngest daughter through in vitro, and she's a child that belongs to myself and my estranged wife. Then we also have my youngest boy, Kevon. He's 11. And sorry, my daughter, Kanaya, she's the youngest girl, and she's 8. And then my youngest is Kevon. He's 11, and that is my wife's son, or my estranged wife's son. So my wife and I we were together for close to 14 years. And through the course of our relationship, it was never good. We had some good times, but through those good times, there was always some bad that came out of it. And that's very sad to say, but this is my story, and this is what I lived through. So, back when I met my wife, she was just coming out of a relationship. And at that time that we met online. I didn't know her full story. I just knew that, she had an ex, and that was that. She didn't have any children. So me personally, I've been with men, I've been with women. I do tend to lean towards women more than men. And I do believe that it's more personal reasons than anything, but that's just what I love. So my wife, Lakita, when I met her, as I said, she was just coming out of a relationship. I was single, so I had no ties to anyone. And I ended up going on a couple dates with her, moved fast. And I think with a lot of us women, when we date each other, we do move fast. Our emotions are so different when we are together, which makes us tend to grow feelings. And I don't think it's more so love. I think it's lust, and we misconstrue those feelings for love, and we just move fast. So anyway, I used to start to go over her house. She never wanted to come to mine, so I started to go to her house. And at this house, she had a roommate. I never knew who her roommate was, but I knew she had a roommate. And come to find out, her roommate was her ex. Now, I've stayed a night at this house. I've never known. And had I known, I would not have, done such a thing, especially to another human. It was very disrespectful. And at that time, I gave my wife, Lakita, the ultimatum, like, either she goes or I have to go, because that's just not how I operate. And me seeing now that I kind of forced her hand to make a decision like that really caused a lot of damage to our relationship very early on. I did fall for her over time. I didn't, I wasn't attracted to her. I didn't want her in that way, because we were just friends. I didn't look at it like that. I was single, and I was just looking to have fun. Well, almost 14 years later, this is where I am. And the story is deep. And I might have to do this in, different parts or whatever. I don't know. But again, like I said, I'm new to this. So, after her ex moved out, I slowly started to move in. We got closer and closer. She started getting closer with my children. Like I said, she didn't have any, and I had my two boys with me at that time, which was one was going on 2, and the other one was going on 5. 5. No, I'm sorry, 7. So, and that was Jordan and Jaden. So, as we were dating, I've noticed that my wife would be very disrespectful with her ex and others. And yet I still stayed. We had no legal ties. We didn't have any children together. It was, I don't know what it was, but I think I can say I do know what it was. I became comfortable. I became very comfortable with how our lives were turning out. And for that, I believe I stayed, which is what we all do. We all tend to become comfortable with certain situations and how people treat us. And we know it's wrong, but we become comfortable. And when we do that and we find that security, we tend to take the hurt over becoming uncomfortable with the situations that we are currently in to become comfortable with a new beginning. Because we can't see past what the current situation is. We can't see past what we can ultimately do alone to build us up to be a stronger us. So there's so many things that happen, and I can't just give you, oh, this happened first, this happened last. But I remember a time where she kept speaking that she wanted children. And as she was speaking of her wanting children, I was okay with it, and we talked about the in vitro, and she told me the steps that she went through to have children. Then I got some family members involved, and I thought that if we just used one of my family members, the child would be a part of me as well as her. It didn't work out like that. And I think she already had an ulterior agenda or motive, whatever you want to call it. But she went upon herself, or she took it upon herself to make a child. without my knowledge. And this child was made in our home and in our bed. And one day when I was at work and I came home, and it was actually 2 occasions I came home from work, and I've noticed that she did things out of order. I knew that once she came home, she put her pajamas on and, will lounge around the house before she heads into the shower and then get into bed. That didn't happen those 2 occasions. Those 2 occasions, she ran straight up the steps and took a shower after coming to get me from work. And I'm a woman first. And us women, we have these intuitions. And when I feel something is off, it's off. So we end up, she was at work one day, and I went to start my investigation. And found the evidence. I found the evidence. And it was so easy to find it because I was the only one to wash clothes. So because I always wash clothes, I knew what I washed. I knew what was dirty, and I knew what was clean. And I'm going to save you the details. Just know that I knew. So I took a picture, sent it to her. But not one time did I think it was with a man. I thought it was with a woman. So all this time, I'm like, okay, she was doing something with a woman that was very disrespectful. So one day, she had took a picture. And I studied the picture. I mean, because at first I'm like, oh, the picture is I liked it. But then I started studying it, and I looked at her stomach. And when you're pregnant, us women, we grow a line, a dark line, and that goes up our belly. Some go all the way up, some stops at the belly button. And she never had that before, but she ended up having it then. So I had called her. I said, take a pregnancy test. And I would never forget, I was sitting downstairs with her cousin, and we were, I don't know, putting something together for my son, or if we were playing with my son. I'm not sure what was going on, but I was on the phone, and I had this conversation with him. And I said, I think she's pregnant. And I said, I'm about to call her, and I'm telling her to take a pregnancy test. And I told her, like, you're going to figure this out because I want to know. I found out she was pregnant. And I think she knew. She just didn't say anything to me. So I left. I packed up my things and I left. I didn't have anywhere to go at that moment, so I went to my mother's. And we stayed. We stayed there for a while. Then, as time went on, it was like she was blaming me for leaving her and deserting her while she was pregnant, instead of understanding the reason why I left. And it was because of her doings. So I ended up going back. I don't know why, but I went back, and again, it became a repetitive cycle. It was always women, always men, always some form of disrespect in our relationship. But she never understood her wrongs. It was always, I am wrong for bringing up the wrong. I am wrong. I love drama because she hurt me, not knowing that she hurt me. Now, I don't ever recall her, and like, she had a relationship before me, but I don't think that it was as serious as I was. I don't, they were both young, but I think because I grew up and had to grow up fast, I knew how to be in a relationship. I knew how to love. I knew how to pour into my relationship, whereas she didn't. And so it went from that to I went from that to, us moving into another home. And, when she had her son, he had a heart problem, and I think, um, his father, for a while I blamed him, but it's not his fault. He was just doing what any man would do in that situation if it was presented to them, and that was take was being thrown at you. He was gullible, to say the least, because, he thought she was on birth control. You can't be on birth control if you're a lesbian with a woman. And, well, you could, but she wasn't, and it was just like a whole bunch of things that was thrown at him that he, again, just ignored and went for what he liked. So anyway, fast forward to, because I've moved out several times, and I can't even count on how many, on my both hands, how many times I moved out and came back. But I wasn't realizing that the things that I was putting myself through, I wasn't really just hurting myself, I was hurting my children. And I had told her at one point, when you have your son, I already know that you're going to, you're going to stop caring for and loving my child because you have your own. And she did. It started to change very, very fast. I saw the difference in how she would interact with my children. And as a mother, I can now see all the wrongs because I did allow it. Not mentally, I didn't know I was allowing it, but I was allowing it because I wasn't stepping in and saying, you know what, I'm done. I always felt like I could change her, and I wasn't understanding that you just can't change anyone, especially someone that doesn't see their faults, their wrongs. So we went from that to, once we moved to another home, I'm like, this is a new start. We have new memories we could create. I thought it was going to be nice. Well, again, it still got worse. You had people that was writing her from jail, like some person that she was dating way, way, way before me. There was, other females and again, males that were just very, very disrespectful. And again, you can't blame them. I had to blame her because she was the one that was allowing it. She was the one that was having this go on. So, I had moved out one time, and this is like some years later. I had moved out and I said I wasn't going back. Like, I got tired of being disrespected, of having, little get-togethers in my house with some female that she continuously disrespected me with through the whole duration of our marriage. And at one point she told me, well, you have to accept it if you want me in your life, because she's my friend and she's not going anywhere. I don't have to accept anything. So I stayed where I was. Some way, somehow, she ended up reeling me back in. And once I came back, we both knew that it wasn't going to last long if we didn't get married. And it was a very immature decision, but we decided to get married. And that took 35 days or 34 to actually put together and get married. And we knew that, we said it was too late to cancel because people knew, because we were going at each other's throats. So we ended up getting married. And after the marriage, there became more disrespect. And I want to put this out there. I was not perfect. I got tired of being faithful. I got tired of being a dummy. And I did. I had friends that I spoke to and that I did see occasionally. But And it doesn't make it right. I don't care if we were on or if we were off. It doesn't make it right. But again, as humans, not just being sexist saying, as women or as men, as humans, when we give, and give, at some point we become drained because it's being taken away from us. Like we begin to break. And I broke, and I didn't even know who I was. I wasn't able to parent my children correctly. I wasn't able to love them the way that I wanted to love them, because I wasn't loving me. I wasn't putting myself first. I wasn't thinking about how my feelings mattered, because I feel like I didn't have feelings. It was always about her. So anyway, after we got married, the bliss did not last long. We didn't do it in a honeymoon. We didn't, do anything traditional. So there were a lot of people that supported us, and there's some people that I think just went along for the ride. But a lot of people just saw things that I didn't see, or saw things that I did see, but I was just being naive. So we're going to fast forward to this year, or this past, 2021. So November of 2020, we had took a trip to Mexico. Florida, then we went to Mexico with our children. And then after we went to Mexico with our children, we then went to Mexico ourselves. So in between those 2 weeks that we went to Mexico twice, my mother and my grandmother both got sick with COVID. And my mother, she had no symptoms whatsoever. Like, you wouldn't even have known she had COVID, because no coughs, no fatigue, nothing. She just was her normal self. Whereas my grandmother, she went into the hospital because she had lung cancer, and she was a smoker. So because she smoked cigarettes and she had lung cancer, the COVID actually affected her in a complete different way. So once I kept in contact with the doctors, and one, she was awesome. Her name is Jamie. But I also kept in contact with my grandmother, because I wanted to make sure that she was okay. Well, I just asked, like, I need you to be honest. This is me speaking to the nurse. Just tell me, like, do you think my grandmother is going to come out of this? Because you hear a lot of bad things, and this is when COVID first came out, so you hear a lot of bad things about it, and you know that a lot of bad things happen, but you don't ever think that it's going to happen to you. And she was very, very transparent about it. Your grandmother smokes cigarettes. Your grandmother has cancer, lung cancer at that. I've seen this happen before, but I don't think she's going to make it out of here. I mean, of course, so my trip to Mexico was good, but it was bad because mentally I was all over the place. Because I didn't really take time to vacation, because my mind was not about vacation. It was about my grandmother. So once we came back, that was my first stop, straight to the hospital. And for several days, after, my first stop was to the hospital all the time, like, to just make sure that she was okay, what she needed, and I would stay with her. Well, November 15th, my grandmother decided that she was tired. She was tired, and I told her, like, if you need to hear that it's okay to let go, you can let go, girl. And She said, I'm just tired. So I said, what do you want to do? And then I ended up calling, my family. I ended up calling my mom, and I called the nurses, and I was telling them, and at that time, again, with COVID, they didn't allow people in the rooms really because she had COVID, but it was like 30 of us, could have been more, in that room with my grandmother as she was transitioning. So my mother, everyone was affected by her death, but my mother, she couldn't handle it. They lived together, and on top of them living together, sometimes they slept in the same bed together. Like, they were very inseparable at times. So my wife, she did not know how to be there for me. She would say she was, but she didn't know how to be. And, I'm there trying to hold everybody else up where I needed somebody to hold me up. And there was times that she would call, like, my other family members, and see what they're up to. Like, if they were coming to the hospital, spending more time with them and not understanding I needed her. So, and then went on to my mother. Every day she cried and said, I want my mom, I want my mom. So I think I knew mentally my mother was declining. I just wasn't accepting it. And I was, okay, we're going to get you better. Every day I turned around, I can't breathe, and she's in the hospital. Or, why are you in the hospital again? And it just got worse and worse and worse. Come April, I think it was like February, maybe March, we knew that my mother had to have surgery. She had an aneurysm in her aorta, and with that sac of blood, they needed to stop it. So I didn't even know that my mother had as many health conditions that she did for a long time. I just knew it was lupus, and then I knew she had COPD, but this was like just recently. And then congestive heart failure. Like, a lot of these things I was just learning since at the beginning of 2022. So, I did my job at working at a company. And I would never disrespect her and say she's not my sister, because she is my sister. That's what I was raised to know her as. Her mother is my mother, which I'll get into that later on. But I did have two mothers, and I do have two mothers, and I do have two fathers. So, but again, we'll get into that at another time. But April 22nd, I was a supervisor for the company that I work for. And I kept having problems with this one particular staff. And she would say little things like, I could be a supervisor if I wanted to. I just choose not to. Or she would cause problems with other staff and make my job harder. So my supervisor became my sister because she was the CEO. However, my sister was never there. I've contacted HR. I've contacted, other resources to try to get a means to how I can handle this one particular staff. Whereas everybody else, they were either terminated or moved to another house because of this one staff. With me, when I called for help, it kind of flipped on me. I ended up being suspended. Reasons unknown. I just said I was being investigated. Then I went from me being investigated by my sister, me being investigated, I lost my job the day my mother was having heart surgery to repair or try to repair the aorta. So all this time, I didn't know, again, why I was being terminated. All I knew was I was just let go. So I ended up getting a letter in the mail, and it said misuse of, I can't remember the wording, but basically I was stealing time. Because as supervisors, we were able to go and adjust time, whatever the case may be. Now, I had a conversation with my sister's father because he's the one who called to give me the bad news. And he said, well, can I ask you why you wouldn't punch in, basically, as soon as I walked in? And as I stated to him, and this is a true story. Me and my wife, because she worked for the company too, we worked together. So if she has to be at a home, at a certain time because she wants to help somebody else out, which she always lets someone leave early, we will get there 30 minutes early. So if I'm 30 minutes early for my shift, I can't punch in. That would be still in time. So I would, wait to, and sometimes I would forget to clock in. Of course, if I'm speaking to my individuals, I was working with special needs at this time. So if I'm speaking with my individuals, see how their day was. If I'm speaking to staff to get a report of what has went on, throughout the day, those things you don't remember right away. Because you're thinking of other things. So there were a lot of occasions where I would just punch myself in. I never always got credit for a quarter to 11 p.m. I sometimes would put 11. I sometimes would put 11:55 instead of me not, because sometimes I will forget exactly what time I got there, but I know it was way before the time that I clocked in, or I should have clocked in, which was at 10:30, because you can't clock in 30 minutes before your shift. That is stealing time because you are on the clock along with another staff. So I, of course, called lawyers trying to figure out what I could do to resolve this issue because I knew that I was fired for false reasons. And I was told, it's at will state, you can probably sneeze wrong, and if they don't like it, or they can let you go. Okay, fine. But then there was one lawyer that said, if you're denied unemployment, call me back. We'll figure it out. Again, I was always the type of person to let people hurt me mentally, emotionally, physically, and I never stood up for that. I always would just be like, whatever, I'll take the loss and I'll keep on moving. But I was still bothered by the fact that I knew I did nothing wrong. To Not Forgotten Home and Community Services, to Sonia, the CEO, or anyone else in there, Barb, the one that this all stemmed around. So why was I being fired? I filed for unemployment and it was denied. But when I went into unemployment, there was, she would put in her time. Sometimes you would see she would edit it and change it. And yes, I did change it a lot of times because it could be my admin day. Admin day, you get one free day where you get 8 hours. You get paid for that, but you have to go and handle things that were necessary for that home. If I'm worked out, okay, I'm going to do my admin day from 8 a.m. to 4:30 or 4 p.m., but I didn't get there until 12, I would edit that time because I wasn't there at 8. So anyway, there was only one day they were able to really say I was clocked in as another staff. With another staff. And I'm like, I never did that before. I'm trying to figure this out. Why was I clocked in the same time as another staff? But I didn't have time to do any research because that was not even presented to me for me to even figure out why I was clocked in at the same time as another staff. Well, come to find out, once I got home and it was all said and done, I did the research and I actually was clocked in with another staff because I, as a supervisor, had to go in and take one of my individuals to the hospital because he was sick. We didn't understand why. He had COVID. So I was on the clock all day long with him because we were at the hospital all day long. Do you think that Not Forgotten Home and Community Services ever did real research? Or was it because of Barb and her wanting my position? She has my sister wrapped around her finger. And one thing my sister said to me at one point when I called her, because Barb she was acting very erratic. She said she had a family emergency. Well, she thought she had a family emergency, which it wasn't a family emergency at all. She just thought that her husband was dead. And the reason why she thought her husband was dead was because she had a tracker on his phone and he was just in a mountain. So instead of calling me or pulling me to the side to address this issue, she calls me with an individual right in front of her. And she's acting very belligerent. Me as her supervisor, I am to be there for her, but also get her to understand that we have to handle things a lot differently when we have the ones that we are caring for in front of us. So when I brought this to the attention of others higher up, it was, oh, she thought her husband was dead, Ryan. Oh, this, oh, that. Okay, but had it been any other staff, write them up and give them a training, or write them up, or what do you think we should do? Instead of saying, you know what, she was right. She was wrong, because she had our individual very, very worried for her. It was, you have to look at Barb as an asset to this company, because Barb brought money here. So because Barb brought money to this company and she's an asset, you turn on any and everybody that was good for your company. I have never addressed this issue because, again, I just didn't care, but it hurts. It hurts so bad to allow people to hurt you and you did nothing about it. You just go and live life until you really know that it really is affecting you. So my mother's health, I lost my job. That was I never even really got a chance to grieve for my grandmother, which died some months prior, because my focus was on me now not having a job and then me being there for my mother. Well, my mother declined so fast, and it wasn't because of the heart surgery. Mentally, she was giving up. So many times I would get a phone call, Ryan, I'm dying. I'm like, Mom, stop saying that, you know. So the hospitals that she was with, they failed her. They failed my mother. And I tried to sue them, but this was after, the passing of my mother. But anyway, my mother had developed a hole in her lung. And she only had a half of left lung, so she only had like a right lung, honestly. And that only good lung that we thought she had a hole in it. So the hospital, that she was one that she would never leave. Like, she loved this one hospital, Shadyside, UPMC Shadyside. We could not get her to leave. So they said that she has to go to a skilled nursing facility. Teach her how to walk better, with, get her balance together and also like her breathing, so she wouldn't be so dependent on the oxygen. So we ended up, or they found a skilled nursing facility for her. It was in McKeesport. So she ended up going to this hospital, or to the nursing facility, Kane. And I had got a phone call. This was like almost day 2. And they said, oh, your mother's oxygen had dipped down into the 50s. And that really worried me and sent off red flags, because that never happened with my mother. Like, yes, she would lose oxygen, but never did it get that low. So they started going on about, oh, well, if she were to stay here, we would have to do hospice. And I'm like, they're saying all these different things. Like, I know what hospice is. I've been in the medical field for many, many years. So I never once thought that we would have to go through that. So I'm like, go to the hospital. We're going to figure this out. So my mother goes to the hospital. We all rush over there. My sister and I, we had to get over there fast. And, everybody else started coming afterwards. Well, we're talking to the doctor in the emergency room, and they're saying that, yeah, we have to correct this hole in her lung. I'm like, correct it? What do you mean? He said, put a chest tube in. I'm like, my mother had this hole in her lung for months. And Shadyside said it will clear up on its own. No, I don't, like, the doctor never believed us. And we're telling him, like, she had it in there, had this hole for months. And, all this time, Shadyside kept saying, well, your mother has early stages of dementia. And we're like, that's why she's always forgetting things. That's why she's, always losing things. Come to find out, that hole in her lung was causing carbon dioxide to escape from her lung and through her body and going to her brain, which was ultimately causing her to be very forgetful. So that was the answer to that question. Not really signs of the dementia, but because of the carbon dioxide. So we end up saying, well, how can it be corrected? The ER doctor said, well, we have to put a chest tube in. We didn't think anything of it. So she gets the chest tube in. Now, I wasn't in the room with her, and I wish I was, because, as I think with me, I always feel like I have to be the one to protect somebody. I always have to be the one to shield them from pain. And I felt like I failed my mother because I wasn't there when that happened. So she kept complaining. It hurts so bad. I don't know why I let this doctor do this to me. It hurts. It hurts. That's all she kept saying. Again, we thinking that she's going to be okay. They said that she could go upstairs once they get a room together, and we will figure it out. I went, got some food. Well, I was trying to get food. Went to a store and ordered some food, and get a phone call. Ryan, you have to hurry up and get up here. The doctor wants to talk to us. I knew it was something bad, but again, I didn't want to feel it. And I've been hurt so much in my life. Pain, it comes, but I don't know how to address it because I put this shield up. So, we wait for everybody to come in, and, we sit down, we're talking, and the doctor goes on to say, well, when I put the chest tube in, he didn't admit to his mistake. But the mistake is that when he put the chest tube in, it went straight through her lung. So when it went straight through her lung, it caused, well, first of all, she couldn't breathe, and it caused bleeding. When he tried to adjust it, it started to bleed a little bit more. And the only reason why I knew this is because a nurse upstairs on the floor that my mother was sent to actually told us what really happened. All the ER doctor was basically saying was, I talked to a surgeon, and there's no way that we could fix it due to your mother's decline in health and her weight. We have to just leave the chest tube in. And me and my brother's in the room at the same time, and I'm trying to get clarity. What does that mean? He said, well, you spoke of hospice. And you said if we're doing hospice, you would take her home. And I watched as my brother, he's a mama's boy. I watched as he was breaking. But I had to be strong. So I said, okay, we have to do hospice. And I sucked it all up. I said, if we have to do hospice, my mother's coming home. That's where she wants to be. That's where she'll be. I said, can you take me to my mother so I can talk to her? I think my sister was in the room already. And I went in and I talked to my mom. But I also talked to my sister. Because even though I'm the oldest, I don't make those decisions by myself. This is the decision that we all make as a whole, as a unit. Her siblings, along with her children. So when we're talking to them, I said, Mom, what do you want to do? Like, you could stay here. The option was stay here, hospice, but you would be on a ventilator, or you go home and do hospice. What do you want? At the time, her being in a hospital, if we do the ventilator, we knew she was never going to come off and that she will ultimately pass, but in the hospital. Or do we bring her home and get her to be comfortable where she wants to be at? So she just kept saying, I want to go home. I want to go home. And I think my mom just wanted to go home. She didn't understand she was going to go home to die. And that hurts so bad because I would never tell my mom she's dying. I never did. So we made that decision. She was coming home. That was a Friday. So we finally got hospice involved that day. On Friday, they didn't have transportation until the following day, which was Saturday. So my brother and my younger brother and myself were in the room with my mother. Like, we both stayed at the hospital. He was sleeping. He slept in the room with my mother, and then came and sat out. Well, he slept with my mother, and my Aunt Nita was in there. And then he came out, and I went in the room to go sit with my mother. So we rotated, and of course they were keeping her comfortable, making sure that she had her, food. She was eating, but that's one thing that I did notice too. Why is my mother eating the way she was? I mean, like, she was eating so much, but she wasn't gaining. She was losing weight. And they still can't tell us why. So anyway, later on that day, we knew that transportation would be there like around 3 o'clock. That's what they said. But before they came, we were on the phone, or the doctor came in. Not came in. He came on the TV screen to talk to us. And he was explaining to us, like, what was going on. But then explain us to how hospice works. So, you don't get all the vital medications that you need. They give you, I think it was Ativan, and they gave morphine. I think they kept her on like 1 or 2 other medications, but that was it. And my mother was on, I want to say, at least 30 pills. And when he went through the list, all the medications he was cutting, it broke my heart. And I just started crying uncontrollably. My mother said, what's wrong? And I just kept saying nothing, because I didn't want her to know that this was it, but I knew it was it. So transportation ended up coming around 4. So I let everyone know, mommy's coming home. Everybody just be waiting for her. It was like a celebrity was arriving, because we had so many family members and so many of her friends and my support system just there as she was being brought in by the paramedics, and taking her into the house. They had the house set up, hospice had the house set up with everything. We went over everything or whatever, but just that, I will never forget how just her coming home, it was beautiful, just bringing her home. But again, I didn't think that this was the end. I don't know why mentally I just couldn't wrap my mind around it. I used to drink, but it was never bad. I mean, years ago it was bad, but I got myself together. I was working. I didn't have time for all that. Something clicked in my brain, and I started to drink because I couldn't handle what was going on. That was a Saturday. We got to spend all day Sunday with my mother, which was Father's Day, 2022. Monday, around 2-something in the morning, my sister said, and this is before, this was early on Sunday, sometime in the evening, shall I say. My mother was hot. I mean, like sweating. We didn't understand what was going on. So I said, I gotta go get my stuff. I gotta make sure, I check my mother's vitals and everything. I call hospice, like, what do I do? Like, she's hot. She's peeing like crazy, and she didn't even have anything to drink, within the last 24 hours. It was odd to them. They didn't understand. Like, take everything off of her. So we're taking everything off of her. The fan her, put cold rags on her. She wasn't responding to us anymore. So sorry. So I'm sorry. So anyway, when I left to come back with, everything to check my mother's vitals with, blood pressure cuff, thermometer, just everything, the works. My sister calls my name, but I was getting out the car, right? Just screaming for me. My mom, she just stopped. She just stopped breathing. And I wanted to know why she just waited till I left. They told us that they weren't going to do CPR. But I begged them. I just kept going. And they said, ma'am, please stop and look. She was already gone. Me and my mother were 15 years apart. We were friends. She was my mother. We argued, but we loved each other. I was the oldest. I wanted my wife. She didn't know how to beat her for me. She didn't. I remember sitting on a couch. This is before my mother passed away. This was that Sunday. And I'm sitting on a chair. My wife is sitting in the dining room. And instead of my wife being there for me, her and my cousin are conversing and enjoying time. And I'm like, by myself. I didn't have my wife. Hold on for a moment. Okay, I'm back. So, my wife and I just, we started to pull apart, from that. And not just that, I mean, like, even before that, we were pulling apart because her mind wasn't on me. And maybe she was grieving from my grandmother. I don't know. These are excuses from everybody to say, okay, maybe she was going through things. She just didn't know how to be there for you. But she didn't know how to be there for me. But she knew how to be in the company of others. Losing my mother, I didn't know how to grieve right away. I didn't start really grieving until, I don't even think I'm still grieving. I mean, I'm grieving, but I'm not doing it properly because I haven't really talked about it. I haven't really expressed my deep down emotions. I mean, I've tried, but when I say I'm broken, I'm broken. And there was one person that was there for me. Well, several. I would say several. But this one person, she has been by my side through everything. And she builds me up. She prays for me. She's just there. But my mind was still on my wife because no matter what, she was my wife. And I saw myself neglecting the people that were there for me because I just wanted my wife. I started not staying home anymore because I started to be very disrespected. I mean, while my mother is deceased, my wife is having people over at the house, having get-togethers, not being there for me, telling me life goes on. Basically telling me, well, what are you grieving for? Like, life goes on. Then you have the fact that she not once took time to hold me or tell me, I love you and I'm here for you no matter what. It was never that. She continuously went out. She continuously had people over. She continuously bonded with everybody else, but neglected me. Then guess what? That girl was around. The one we had issues with 4 years. One time I came home, as I always did, and there was that one girl in the bed with my wife. That took it all. It just took it all away from me. And I still can't forgive her for that because she still doesn't understand how wrong she was. She will say, I'm wrong for that. But you, and it's always but me. Because I wasn't staying home. What am I staying home for? To keep having gatherings with people? That's not how I grieve. I'm wrong. I am miserable. These are words coming out of her mouth. I'm miserable because all I want to do is be in the bed. I'm miserable because I just want to stay in the house. There's no understanding. Like, that's how I handle my depression. I sleep. But as my wife, it should have been, let me console you. Let me uplift you. Let me help you. But she's so mean, so nasty. And here we are. You know, there's so many things that, you know, could have been done differently. There's so many messed up. I was raped. I was molested. I've lived in hotels growing up. I've peed in buckets growing up. I've lost my oldest son. I got pregnant, 14, had him 15, and he died when I was 16. I was a baby with a baby. I was emancipated at 16. I had my own home. I've been through a lot. And I put my kids through a lot. But my kids are very forgiving. They're loving. They're understanding. But I don't know how to be a better me because I'm broken. Every time I go through something, I'm like, I just call my mom. She will call me. What's wrong, Rara? Rara, what's wrong? I know something's wrong. Talk to me. Tell me. She always knew. My mother. Am I wrong for moving on with another woman? But I still can't even fully give myself to her because I still have to break away from my wife. I still have to break away from this depression. And one person she's been through it all with me. And I've done some pretty bad things to her because I'm all messed up. But she still stays. I'm not going to keep you long, but I will be back for more stories. I just want people to understand that even through your darkest days, don't give up. I've recently been suicidal, but not to the point where I would want to do it, but just don't want to be here because now I know what it's like to want my mom. My mom used to always say, I want my mom, I want my mom. I've never stopped her from wanting her mother. I've never stopped her from feeling that way. But I want my mom. I want my mom. This past year, some months have been so bad. Try to find a job and try to just get my life back. Still feeling betrayed by the people that I looked up to and by the people that I gave my heart to. Just so messed up. And I just don't know how to be better. I'm gonna go now. I pray you all have an awesome Sunday. But I hope that I can encourage some people. Right now, I probably am not that encouraging. I'm just telling a story. But I want you to know that I'm still here. And I want you to know whatever you're going through, you're still here. It's not always going to be like this. I don't know when. I don't know how. But your life will change. Talk to you soon.